Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. This time around, we are checking out Jojos Bizarre Adventure, and just a little disclaimer, if you've not watched Jojos Bizarre Adventure, or at the very least, if you're not up to part 4 yet, which is called Diamond is Unbreakable, then a lot of this is probably gonna fly over your head, or at the very least be extremely baffling. In any case, this is a mod that puts you firmly in the shoes of one Yoshikage Kira, a extremely villainous character from said series, who just happens to be a fairly horrific serial killer with the added dash of having a special supernatural ability, also known as a stand, to turn things that he touches into bombs. That's why flipping coins at enemies in this mod makes them explode. Now, in the series, Kira takes the hands of women that he has killed, and in the mod, the hands are used as an excuse to acquire extra spins on his ability. This one here allows you to touch the floor, the walls, items, even other enemies, and turn them into bombs. In the series, it's used to quite creative extents, but in the mod itself, I find that its usefulness is a little limited. You can probably tell what I mean just by the gameplay here. You have to get pretty up close and personal. You have to make sure you draw enemies into your traps if you're laying bombs on the floor. And really, before long, you just end up switching back to flicking coins into faces because, well, it's just more effective, really. Happily, with all of these explosions going off, you'll take particular note of the fact that I am not taking splash damage. Anyone who's familiar with me and explosives in the vast majority of Doom mods knows that I cannot be trusted, especially when splash damage is involved, so that is certainly a small mercy in my favor here. Coming back to the slightly unsavory subject of collecting hands, not every hand you acquire will actually upgrade your abilities. In fact, if we murder this poor unsuspecting woman here and collect her hand, we'll find that we can just creepily stroke it, which at first felt like a strange, bizarre inclusion, until I took notice of the fact that stroking a severed hand actually improves your health. Even more bizarre, I found that later on down the line, if you acquire rings and put them on said severed hands, you can actually improve your armor as well, so that's certainly a thing. Something else which is definitely also a thing is the next upgrade you can get, which is the Sheer Heart Attack, a homing skull-face tank, which unfortunately has a bit of trouble with flying enemies, but thankfully the alt fire on this one lets you fling that tank directly into enemy faces. It's quite possibly one of the most effective abilities. Much like the others, you won't suffer from any unfortunate splash damage should you be close enough to the explosion, and it does a pretty damn good job of sniffing out any nearby enemies, having the wonderful ability to also scale walls. Quite frankly, once you get your hands on the hands that allow you to access this ability, things become even easier than they were before. In all honesty, this is a character that is pretty damn OP. Believe it or not, there is actually weaponry here that you can acquire outside of Kira's stand abilities. One such weapon is acquired from taking out a police lady, and in this case using a bit of creative explosive jumping to get up on this podium and acquire her hand, which also coincidentally happens to be holding a revolver. It's a neat, ghoulish touch, certainly in keeping with the character of Yoshikage Kira, and while the primary fire is a little weak sauce, if you use the alt fire, you can give a little bit of extra explosive kick to those bullets. Another weapon that you'll be able to acquire is the Big Gun. This is pretty much a super shotgun, with a tremendously powerful primary that sends enemies flying backwards, and an explosive secondary, which is pretty much in line with the secondary that we had with the revolver. You'll also notice that whenever I fire, a strange cacodemon-like apparition appears at the barrel end. I have no idea what that is. I've watched the anime, and unless I looked away at an extremely critical moment, I'm pretty sure that wasn't actually a thing, but it's here nonetheless, and to be honest, anything goes when it comes to a JoJo mod. You can pretty much throw in anything and it'll somehow fit. I mean, this is a series where Kira's dead father possesses a Polaroid photograph to enable himself to fly around town using a magic arrow to turn people into stand users. Really, when we're talking about things that seem a little out of place, this is a minor point. Outside of guns, there's actually an item that you can acquire here that can be used as a weapon, and that would be all of these cat plants littered around. You can only carry a maximum of 10, and the reason for that is pretty much because of stuff like this. They are phenomenally powerful. They grant you the ability to fire explosive-filled bubbles, and it's a cat in the form of a plant. I could explain why it's a cat in the form of a plant, but I think you just probably want to check me into a mental institution. Watch the goddamn anime if you want answers. They won't make sense, but you'll get answers nonetheless. So, would I recommend Jojos Bizarre Adventure? Well, in the context of being able to play as an absolute murderous bastard with the ability to make every demon explode, doubly so if you've got ketchup installed, and also to engage in Mona Lisa-fueled berserk punch-ups. Yeah, I'd recommend it. I'd recommend it. I had a nice little bit of catharsis blowing through this one. I remember having very much similar experiences with Dio, but one caveat with this would be you probably might want to watch JoJo for context. Actually, it doesn't really matter. Either way, you're probably going to be slightly baffled. It's all part of the fun. There are additional bits and pieces that are littered throughout this mod that I haven't covered here. For example, there's an item that replicates Dio's time-stopping effect, if you can find it. And there's a few other spins on the old berserk effect here as well. I wasn't entirely sure what the major differences between those were, but I think I got most of the broad points. I do have to give particular commendation to the sense of Yoshikage Kira's style, especially as reflected in the HUD, largely represented by the color purple. But if there's one final thing I absolutely have to show you, it's the final upgrade to Kira's stand ability, which is known as Bites the Dust. So this ability I'm about to talk about is pretty much the biggest reason for the spoiler tag at the start of this video, because this is pretty much Kira's trump card. It's something that he whips out close to the end of the series, and you just think, how the hell is anybody supposed to get around this? So what exactly does it do? Well, in the context of this particular Doom mod, it is pretty much an I win button. You activate this, the level ends, you move on to the next. In the context of the anime, however, Bites the Dust is in fact a bomb that resets time every time it's triggered. Only the effect of the bomb, the people it kills, still die, even if they're not anywhere near the bomb when the day catches back up with it. So if you try and apply that to Doom, it kind of assumes that you've played through these levels already at some point in the future and destroyed everything with this ability. So it's a little bit of a mindfuck, really. Even I'm not quite understanding it entirely, but I'm just worried that if I try to dedicate any further thought to this concept, I may start developing a fatal nosebleed. So there you go, that's pretty much Jojos Bizarre Adventure in a nutshell. I certainly had a fair amount of fun with it, and if you're interested in giving it a whirl for yourself, the link, as usual, is in the description below. While I'm at it, I'd like to give a great big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so very much for your contributions and helping to make content like this possible. If you're interested in lending a hand yourself, you can find a link to my Patreon page, conveniently located, much like the download, in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future episodes of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.